Welcome to the Real Chat Podcast,
where we talk business, lifestyle, and mindset.
For the modern entrepreneur.
I'm Baxter Colburn.
I'm Allison Elise.
I'm Mandy Wilkie. Let's chat. Welcome back to the Real Chat Podcast. I'm Mandy. This is Allie and Baxter, and I can't keep track of how many episodes we've now done because we sometimes do a couple recordings at once, but we do change our clothes. So we try to look the part for you, maybe flip the ponytail to a different side. But today we're super excited to talk to you about something that probably most entrepreneurs, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, most people probably struggle with, but the topic of rest in our business and what that means and what it looks like and how do we feel when we're in it. Do we feel good about it or do we feel guilty about it? I think Baxter, the topic was kind of your idea.
Yeah.
And we touched base on it a little bit with the ins and outs because it was something that you wanted to prioritize, maybe because you have a baby on the way and getting prepared for baby, but also just as a business owner. So talk to us a little bit about, and I think, did this stem from church well?
Yeah. So we... on Sunday, it was funny because we talked about this in our last recording that we all kind of got a conviction on Sunday in different areas of our life, which I think is great. But on Sunday, we have a really talented worship pastor that just is really good about not stopping worship, but like pausing in between songs. Because sometimes you'll have that pastor's like, yep, we got to do our 4 songs, we get to the message and we're done, right, type of thing. But she's really good about when she feels convicted or moved by something, she will stop in between songs to just talk for a second or just pray for a moment. And she stopped after 2 songs. It's funny because her and her husband came over for lunch on Sunday afterwards. And I told her, I'm like, very rarely when you or somebody in church, because sometimes the pastor will be like, I feel like somebody in the room, right, needs this today. And 97% of the time, I'm like, not me. I'm like, I'm good about that. And I kind of partially joking, partially serious, depending on what the thing is, right? I'm like, I'm not struggling with alcohol addiction. I'm not struggling with this. I'm like, yep, I hope that person, whoever they are, finds that healing in their family's trauma. I'm like, all right, but today. And she's like, I think someone, I feel like somebody in the room or people in the room are struggling with the concept of rest. And I was like, I'm here. Hello, that's me today. That one's for me. And it was fascinating because she's like, I feel like so often we are so busy, right? It's a new year. So we're trying to get into our groove and we're trying to set our goals and we're trying to just run. And so oftentimes we forget that it's okay to rest. It's okay to rest with ourselves, rest, in God and let him take care of every aspect of our life and trust him to lead us where we need to go. And as she was talking, it kind of hit me. I was like, how am I resting? Am I resting? Am I not resting? And stemmed into baby coming soon, stemmed into as a business owner. That's why I think I texted you ladies as well. I was like, this kind of stuck out to me because we are all guilty, and we've talked about this on air and off air a little bit in passing about going on vacation, going to our kids' events at school, having something with family come up when you actually need to be editing. Are you allowed to go to the movies? And what if I see a client? Aren't you? Why aren't you? Little things like that, right? And it kind of kept coming back to that, and I was like, why don't we talk about this? Because if we ourselves are struggling with it at times, how can we share maybe the ways we've been successful in it, or can we help each other potentially with areas that we're struggling? And there's probably others out there that also need help with that.
Yeah.
So I know, Allie, you've mentioned that you've kind of had a few different ways from what I've talked to you about or what you've talked to us about that kind of help you, or ways that you've kind of combated it a little
Something
bit.
That you feel you're pretty good at.
I was just going to say, I think after 14 years of business ownership, I have been really intentional about taking rest. I used to take a whole month of November off after my busy season solely for the purpose of my sanity, because I go from every single day being a mom, but then also starting my morning with crying children, overstimulated families, trying to get everybody to smile and have fun. And then I come home to overstimulated children and crying, my family crying.
Trying to get everybody to smile.
So many tears.
And I feel like it was so easy for me in the beginning of my business to get lost in that and to be like, I have to be everything for everyone, and I have to always be available, and I have to make sure that I'm answering people back, because if they see me out at the grocery store, they know that I saw my phone and I have it with me, but I'm not answering their text message or whatever. And I've had to, number one, really be confident in my business and where I stand in the fact that when I am with my family and when I am where I'm at, I need to be present fully with those people that I am with. It's like the prime example of you both. I mean, I think I went to bed last night with like 32 messages on my phone, like text messages, because I'm
29 of them. Yeah.
Are you guys?
Sorry, Allie.
Group chats, and I'm in a group chat with my sisters, and then with my mom, and all these things, and we have a new baby in our family, so there's a lot of happiness and goodness, and I also have not been sleeping, and that has been very apparent on every single episode. We talk about how I don't get to sleep because my toddler is obsessed with me, and I went to bed last night. I had my phone. I sleep with my phone next to me. It's probably not a good thing. So many people say that you should go to sleep with your phone in a different room.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that
I don't do it, but I love that.
That's a good tip to make sure that you rest.
I agree.
Because I am that person that I scroll. Right now I'm shopping for swimsuits for my trip. So I'm
super fun.
I scroll. And
said no woman ever.
Just constantly looking at my phone. I went to bed last night and I turned my do not disturb on and I looked and I said, they'll be okay with me not messaging back, because right now I need to shut my eyes. My son was finally asleep. He was next to me, but he was finally asleep, and I was just so overstimulated all day. And so I set this boundary for myself, and I'm very confident in knowing that, one, I have a really reputable business, and people know that I will respond when I can. And I have to kind of set my own terms on when that is appropriate and when I can respond. And I've set hours on when I can do that in terms of business. But choosing to feel really confident and not really worry about what my client is thinking, because in my opinion, they're going to think it regardless, whether they outwardly tell you it or they're going to think it and move on with their day. It may cross their mind a couple times, but unless it's a really bad issue, I feel like people understand. And so taking that time for yourself so that you know that you're making the right decision with where you're at, whether that your kid's having a meltdown or you have a family emergency where you have to do something and everything else has to wait, that's okay. I think those are just like kind of a lot. That's a lot of talking about what I do, but all in all, it's being confident in knowing that I will get back to those people. And building that relationship with my people, that they know that they're not gonna that they're not gonna take it personally, and that they know that I'm gonna respond to them.
I will say too, going off of that, and thank you for sharing all of that. I think that's really insightful. And maybe, Mandy, you've had this happen before too. Often the deadlines that we give ourselves are way more extreme than what our clients actually have for us, right? Like, obviously, yes, if I say I'm going to get it to you by Friday and I don't turn it into you on Friday, they'll reach out, right? And be like, you said today, right? But I found that the projects that I stress the most about are the ones that the clients really are like, I not that they don't care, they want their stuff back, but they're like, you can take the weekend and relax, like get it to me on Monday. It's okay. I don't need this from you Saturday night because you were stressing about not getting it to me by Friday, right? Like that's not the deadline. So I think sometimes some of that lack of rest is self-imposed frustration on our end of like, well, if I'm not working, and we've talked about that, right? Like when it's not a physical brick and mortar that you show up to sometimes to sell somebody an item, and you're like, well, if I'm not on my computer editing, or if my camera is not in my hand, or if I'm not meeting with clients to be in my magazine, then I'm obviously just fluffing around doing nothing, and people think that I'm not working or I don't care. It's not the case, obviously, but I found that to be so self-inflicting for lack of rest, because you're like, I have to be doing something. It's like, no, yes, but also no, you don't have to stress yourself and push yourself to a crazy limit when truthfully it probably doesn't matter to most of the people that you're dealing with, because they are like, why are you fussing so much about this at 11:30 at night? I
think society as a standard misunderstands and misplaces rest and laziness.
Yes.
We're getting those two mixed up a lot. We're not necessarily, taking into consideration that laziness is knowing you have something to do, deliberately not doing it. Am I guilty of that sometimes? Heck yes. Aren't we all?
Yeah.
There are things, laundry, everything's piling up and you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling that today. I'm probably just going to hang out and watch the Packers kick the Cowboys' ass.
Yeah.
Literally
Worth it. You can
literally what happened to me
postpone
on Sunday. I was
all
like,
your
I have
editing.
all this list. I was straight up lazy on Sunday because
shame.
Because so is the rest of the world.
You were working,
Right.
though. You were supporting your team.
True.
That is important in work right there.
True. But laziness and choosing rest,
Correct.
two totally different things.
100%
Agreed.
agree with
Yeah.
you.
And we need to remember that. I think business owners need to remind themselves of that. Parents need to remind themselves of that.
I don't know if
Take control
anybody
of
else had this happen to you. So for those that don't live in Wisconsin, we had a huge blizzard. We had our first big one of the year. We got over a foot of snow in 48 hours or something.
I think
like
it was
that,
closer to 2,
basically.
wasn't it?
Maybe
It was a lot of
It was a
snow.
lot of snow, but I had a kid-free weekend, so I was supposed to have, I think, 6 things this last weekend. I had talked to Rachel, had it all planned out ahead of time. I've got this big weekend I had a big shoot, I had a lot of different stuff, meetings, and I was so excited to get all of these things because I felt like I was kind of limping along to start my year to get to this point and be like, all right, now we're in, now I'm locked in for the year, let's go type of thing. And everything got canceled.
Yeah.
And I was staring at a whole weekend wide open with my wife, which I'm very grateful for, but it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, okay. So I guess we'll do stuff around the house and we'll sleep in and we'll play games and just spend time together, right? And had a kid-free weekend and it was awesome and I loved that, but it was weird because I had to quickly flip my brain from being disappointed that I had to rest as opposed to being grateful for it because I know that there's more stuff that's coming and it's going to be busy with a baby and everything else that's coming up. But my entrepreneurship brain immediately, I was like, well, I should work now, right? I should probably edit or do something. And I think I worked for an hour the entire weekend. And I'm really happy about that I didn't fall victim to that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I was like, well, I was supposed to work all weekend and now I'm not going to work at all. I'm like,
Guilt creeps in.
it felt like it a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And my kids were off of school as well on Monday for MLK Day. And I was like, all right, I should probably, it's normally my work day. The Mondays are my CC day. And I was like, okay, I think I worked again for an hour. And then I waited until everybody was in bed and then finally worked another 45 minutes. But I was like, it's okay. You thankfully are in a good spot where you don't have to feel like you have to do all of this and you can rest. And I feel better today because of that. Whereas I'm sure if I had everything happen the way it's supposed to, I would be dead dog tired right now and being like, oh gosh, can we just get through this so I can be done?
Yeah.
Because I'm exhausted, which those weekends do happen. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I guess I needed this. And I'm glad that I did have that.
Yeah. I don't rest well. It's not something that I figured out as a person, as a human, also as an entrepreneur. And I think there's two, when I look at rest, I look at it a couple different ways. I woke up at 4 a.m. and could not shut my brain off this morning. And I kept feeding it with all the things that I'm stressed about. Well, nobody's going to fall back asleep with that mindset. And at one point I stopped and I said, I'm going to pray. Right? I'm going to just turn it all over. And then I felt some guilt in that because I haven't been praying like I should. Right? So it depends on your mentality and who you are as a person. I'm very type A. And so instead of embracing letting God in to take some of the stress, I stressed about asking God to relieve some stress. Right? So rest can be looked at in so many things. I think, it's probably been more years than I think, but this whole thought of self-care, especially in the world of women, at first I kind of scoffed at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's an excuse to do this, an excuse to do that. And then I was thinking about it the other day, when was the last time I went and had a massage? And not a luxurious massage, but I need some help because I'm like this all day, every day. It's how I sit. And I need to just go, whew. And I have a fabulous partner that has this beautiful spa that I can go to and get massages pretty much whenever I want them. Why am I not doing that? Yeah. Well, sometimes, and they will tell you this at the spa. Michelle's the manager. She will tell you, you can't do 60 minutes, Mandy. You got to do 90 because it takes you 82 to calm down.
Yeah. Carrying all your stress in your shoulders and your back.
But I think sometimes in the moment when I'm giving myself that time, it actually adds more stress and causes me less rest. So figuring out as an entrepreneur how to balance allowing yourself to rest without guilt and allowing ourselves to rest before we respond, and rest in our responses. I think in the world that's very connected, I feel like if I get an email, I need to respond to an email. If I get a text, I need to respond to a text. If I get a phone call, I need to return the phone call. And the truth is I don't know that anybody expects it right away, but we've created this monster. And I've always prided myself in being a good responder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too.
But if it's making me a bad listener, my kids have said, Mom, you're a horrible listener. And I'm like, am I? Or do I just have too many things? Like when you're talking to me, am I in the middle of something? Because that doesn't make me a bad listener. That makes bad timing for when you ask me the question, right?
Yeah. Makes you an interrupter. Just
Yeah. But
What?
Just kidding.
Huh?
but that's one of the, the disadvantages to working from home is that my kids don't necessarily, we talked about this a little when we had Raleigh on the podcast. When I'm sitting at the table in front of my computer, she knows I'm working, right? But it wasn't always that obvious to the kids. Or if I'm typing something, I'm not necessarily on social media like liking your post. I might be responding to a DM or whatever. So I think rest is not a quality that I have mastered. And I think it's something that you're always growing and evolving with it as a business owner.
I was going to say too, us, like just in general, human beings, if you are not choosing to rest at some point in your life, your body's going to make you rest.
100%.
Correct.
Your
And
surroundings.
usually you're not going to like it.
Yes, it's going to be forced rest.
Yep.
And it's going to put you out, and it could ruin the things that you've worked so hard for.
Yeah.
And that's a business aspect, but I mean physically.
Yes.
If you are just at it every day and you refuse to stop the grind, and there are so many beautiful things about the grind, but when you choose to not rest,
Yeah. God will make you do it.
Asking for the world to force you to rest at some point.
Yeah.
And it's mindfulness as well in your own personal space of business and that like personal life and creative edge and even just like headspace. Mentally, you can be so worn out that your body chooses to shut down.
And that is me. That is me. That is, I've had COVID twice, and both times I was in bed for 10 days. And I'm like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Like, I hear you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But it happened to me when my son was 9 months old. I ended up in the hospital for 4 days, and there was no diagnosis for what I had. Nobody could figure it out. And my mom said, you just needed to rest.
You're exhausted.
Like you're exhausted, right?
Exhaustion.
And I will go and I will push and I will fight and then I will be shut down so hard.
And that's a wonderful quality of yours is that
But
you will
it's-
push and that you will be there for the people that you need to be there for.
But at what cost?
I was just going to say, what good is it if you're doing it over and over and over again at the expense of yourself?
Yeah, it is definitely something that I need feedback and guidance on, and I need instruction on, and I need someone to hold me accountable for. Yeah.
I will say this, and I think you and I have talked about this, Mandy. It's always funny to say this sentence. One of the best things that happened because of getting divorced, ...
If you can find the silver
Which is
lining.
always a funny thing to say, but I've said this enough times to enough people, right? And I've had different answers to that. But one of the best things that has happened because of that is it's forced me to be more intentional with rest, but also being more intentional with my kids. And by being more present with my kids, that's instilled rest, right? I know that's kind of a funny thing. Like, well, if you have young kids, how are you really resting? I'm like, because I'm not working and I'm present. And we've had this conversation. Our kids are only young for so long.
Yeah.
And I feel like I knew that as a young parent, but not that I'm that much older now, but the older that I get, the more I'm like, they really are going to be gone way faster than I'm ready for them to be gone, because I care so deeply about my kids and know that hopefully I'm still cool to them and they want to hang out with me when they're out of the house, right? But like, as soon as my kids are gone, they're not going to live at the house anymore. And if
They don't come back.
sit at the table and play Legos for an hour, that's great.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to always get to do that.
And they'll remember
unfortunately.
that.
Correct.
They'll remember
and that's
that.
way more important than, oh, Dad was great because he had this great business. They're maybe going to remember that. Maybe they don't. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want them to remember me being a business owner. Hopefully they will remember my work ethic, right? And my dedication to the people around me, but not the fact of, oh, he was always in his business, and not have that negative, like, ugh, that goes with it. I hope to be the dad of like, oh, Dad was always the first to say yes to make a blanket fort with us or play Legos or do a silly thing with us, right? Like that's what I want to be remembered by, which is rest, which is important because that's way more valuable than any amount of money, any amount of success in business, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is something I'm not good at. I'm not. Even last night I was watching, my daughter and I are binge watching a show that she's been dying to watch for probably a year now. And I finally gave in and we've been watching it together. And last night I was
So what is it?
Dance Moms.
Oh, okay.
She's a dancer and she loves that I'm not that kind of a dance mom. I'm like, see, aren't I awesome?
Could be way worse.
But yeah, she's been wanting to watch it. But while we were watching it, I was doing Instagram and scheduling my Instagram on my phone. And she's like, Mom, will you rub my feet? And I'm like, I can't rub your feet while I'm typing this. And then I was like, but I'm also packing my schedule because it's the beginning of the year and it's what we do. We pack our schedules. But I think even when I'm on vacation, I have a very hard time completely unplugging. I will still check emails. I will still do Instagram. I will still do social media. And I think the reality is that other business owners take vacation and unplug. But the three of us have a very social media driven business.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the rest side of me says, should I post that I'm on vacation? Or will someone think, oh, she's on another trip. She must have money coming out of her ears. And that's not the truth.
Right.
Right. If anybody knew about, the vacations that I go on, they'd know I don't spend any money on them.
Right.
And I'm lucky for that. But the truth is the perception of what people see sometimes keeps us from doing the thing we need the most.
Mm-hmm. I've said this a few times, right? I haven't slept better than the last 4 months because I hired an editor to do a lot of my video editing. Not everything, but that investment is worth so many hours back that I know my wife is grateful for, that my kids are grateful for, because I would get so worked up and so frustrated. And I think you and I have talked about that before. I'm like, I am not in a right head state because I have my editing list is 12 deep. And when is this going to happen? Like, I don't know when this is going to happen. I have my kids this week and I have this. And it's
and I'm booking more shoots on top of it.
And it was
right?
just this compound effect that was driving me insane. And as soon as I could pass that off, and then it was the trust issue of like, well, is this person even going to be good? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's so much better than me in so many ways. And my clients are like, oh, my videos have never looked better. I'm like, at first I was like, well, hey. And I'm like,
what do you mean? They didn't look better when I was doing them?
But I was also the first person to be like, oh, good.
Yeah.
It's still quality.
She's
and I
part
don't
of
have
your
to,
team.
Yeah. And I can like, I can rest.
Sleep at
So I'm
night.
like, got it. Like, so like it took me a minute to get out of my way, but like, and I've told that to other business owners. I'm like, if you can contract even pieces of your business out, like to a trusted person, right? Don't just throw money around and say, oh yeah, hopefully one of these things stick. Like, be intentional about what you're doing. Like, that's an investment that I will hold on to for as long as I can, because she's phenomenal and she does such great work for me, and my clients, most importantly, are happy. I'm like, oh, fantastic. That's what I wanted.
So you two are clearly better at it than I am.
Well, I relate to you in the sense that when I'm at home and I'm with my kids, I will check my phone and I will like be conscious of it. And both of my children now, Wes just follows Addie's lead, but Addie will look at me and be like, Mom, get off your phone. We're watching a movie. Zach will be sitting at the table and something will pop up on my phone that I have to answer. I say that very lightly.
Yeah.
No, it can wait till after dinner. And he'll be like, no, we're not going to check that right now. And I struggle with that because it's taken me a very long time to find that balance in being at home and being home and letting some of those messages and emails and texts go unread for a little bit so that I can be present with my family. It's taken me a long time to get there. But in my family's eyes, you're still there.
Yeah. You're still not
doing
good
it all
at
the time. And I'm always on my phone and my face is planted in my phone when I'm managing 5 different accounts and doing all these things. But so I relate to you in that because I have worked really hard personally on that aspect of it. Like
it takes a lot of intention and practice.
It does.
And
it really does.
Not to tie back to our ins and outs conversation, but I really want to start putting my phone in the kitchen before I go to bed.
Yeah.
Because I think part of my problem when I wake up at night or can't sleep or in the morning is because I'm reading that email that maybe upsets me, or I'm reading someone's comment on our social media that isn't accurate.
Fixating.
Yeah.
On that.
And then I wake up in the morning and I'm checking the same process, which can define your day, good or bad, right? So if I can keep that down, I'm not going to get anything accomplished before 8 a.m. when I get the kids off and get them organized anyway. So that's number one. But talk to me, advise me on, and advise an entrepreneur that has this problem. When you have these thoughts that you can't let go of because you've taken things personally and you need the rest, how do you get out of that?
Well, I mean, I feel like everybody's different, right? As far as what works for you and what doesn't. I'm really lucky in the sense that and I've talked about this before, that I have a really supportive partner. You know, Rachel does a great job of reading me a lot better than I can read myself more often than not. And the things that she calls me on sometimes like blow my mind, because I'm like, I didn't even remotely
I didn't
think of
say that.
Yeah.
That wasn't a look on my face.
Exactly. But she's like, I can tell that this or this and this. And I'm like,
So great that she can see that though.
oh yeah, right. Like just little things like that. Like, and it just, that alone, I think, is so valuable, to be in a relationship that helps, because she knows that I will go so headlong into my work or be so fixated on frustration. I've also gotten better about just sharing with her when I am upset about something, as far as like especially business related, because as a solopreneur, right? Like, you don't have a staff, you don't have your advising team you can go back to and be like, all right, guys, well, this sucks today, but let's talk about it.
Could you please answer this email for me? Because I don't want to.
Like, it's more often than not an army of one, and you sit in your thoughts all day and you're like, this can't believe they said that about me. I can't believe this. And you're just like,
or this isn't untrue. It's a half truth, or it's a twisted truth.
Correct. And you're just sitting there beating yourself up about it. And then your spouse will be like, hey, so you're obviously bothered. Like, want to talk about it? And I'm like, yes, please. Like, that's great. Or I've just been like, hey, so this happened today. I'm frustrated about it. And more often than not, after 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, all right, it's really not that big a deal. I feel a lot better about that. Thank you for helping me come out of that and get out of my own head, because I was so focused in that moment, because I didn't take a minute to pick my head up, as opposed to being like, oh, like, I'm so frustrated in this moment. So that I found has been really, really helpful and beneficial in my...
I love that.
I was going to say, I think facing those like pieces of it head on. I mean, an email that really frustrates you or something, take care of it. Obviously, when it's needed to be taken care of, don't always just, like, avoidance is probably not the best thing, right? Like, we all sometimes have that problem where we're avoiding things and it literally just makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
Makes it way worse. But then I also feel like reaching out to people that understand you and understand like what you're going through and how you are as well. You have an amazing spouse as well, and partner.
Not technically spouse, but
partner. Partner. And I feel like that's really important to reach out to friends. Like when you're having those hard moments, like, I think that there's a really magical or like crucial hours of our days that need to be untouched by business.
I agree.
It's so hard for me, but it's really important that once like 8:30 p.m. hits, I just leave it for the next day.
Which, when you think about that sentence, who else do you know that's a business owner in a brick and mortar that isn't a sole entrepreneur like us that's still working at 8:30 p.m.? Very few.
Right.
Their business closes and they go home for the day.
Yeah.
They're probably thinking about it, right? But there's not much that they can, like you said, physically do, right? Like if I'm whatever stocking,
I can't go buy something from
a grocery store at 9
no.
p.m., right? It's
Right.
home.
Right.
Yeah. I just think that that's so important. Like you said, you're waking up like if you're being woken up in the middle of the night by an email that you've avoided all day, you should have taken care of it at 2 o'clock when you got it, because that 8:30 to 6:30 hour time span, that 8 hour time span should be untouched by work. In my opinion, there are many times that I am working until 1:30 in the morning because that's the only time I can, or whatever it may look like. But overall, I think that's a virtue of mine that I don't really waver from anymore, because I feel so much better when I wake up with the sun and I take on those things that at night, for some reason, I'm sure we all can relate to this, for some reason at night, those problems are just like screaming at you, and they are so big, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, wait a second, I can handle this. There are so many times that has happened to me where I'm starting to like read myself and understand that when it comes, and if it's really bothering me, just do it. Just take care of it now.
Do you know what? That's actually a very valid point, because do you know that I didn't get that email until 6 o'clock
p.m.?
Yeah. So the funny thing is that I really shouldn't have even looked at that email last night.
What was the purpose of that?
Well,
right?
there was a purpose because, you know, in our careers, we have deadlines, right? And yesterday was deadline day.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I read it, right? But at the end of the day, like in reality, if these fires come in after hours, it's only going to be worse because we can't fix them in the moment. We can't do anything about them until the next day. So I think that goes back to putting the phone away. There's no reason for me to read emails at 6 because someone else isn't going to be reading their emails till tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
And be stewing on it too. Like, why haven't they responded yet?
And
like, because they're with their family or they're
don't get me wrong. Like, life doesn't suck as an entrepreneur all the time, but we touch on things that we want to help other entrepreneurs overcome because we have dealt or are dealing with them ourselves. And the one thing that I'll go back to from every podcast we've been on that we've had a guest, and even our own, which has only been 6 or 7, at some point in every podcast, I think one bit of advice that's come up is we've said, entrepreneurship is hard. Keep going.
Correct.
Be resilient. You're going to get knocked down. And we don't call it the real chat for no reason. We want to be real. And I think, you know, letting people know that if you can, especially if someone would have said to the young Mandy instead of the almost 50-year-old Mandy, if someone would have said, find rest, have good balance, and don't take things so personally. And I started my foundation with that at 23. God, my life would look different now. But instead, I'm trying to learn it in my mid 40s, the late 40s.
What you're willing to learn, though, is different as opposed to being set in your ways of like, oh, that's how I've always done it.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what
it takes a lot of intent to fix it, way harder. So if I can inspire somebody that's starting out to have a better base value in their business.
2 things really fast that have stood out to me, though. One thing is that I guess one way I've found to be successful, right? We talked about our phones. So I think I don't think you do. Do you wear an Apple Watch?
I do not. I have a Garmin.
You have a Garmin.
So I can get my texts and my emails, but I can't respond with my voice.
Perfect.
And I can't answer a call.
So,
and I do have it on Do Not Disturb during the podcast.
I was going to say, so one thing I've learned that has been helpful for me at least is that as an Apple user, at least, there's something that you can set your work hours, right? So you can drastically reduce the amount of notifications that you get, that you see or you get pinged for. So that alone has helped me with my sanity throughout the day.
I think that's just an Apple feature on your phone you can do too.
Yes, it is.
Right? Set working.
Then also having it tied to the watch, right? I'm less inclined because if my phone's in my hand, I'm like, well, I mean, I could just check my email fast.
Yeah.
It's right here, as opposed to like, yes, you can do it on your watch, but it's
you got to shuffle.
There's a lot more that you got, like, the process a little bit harder, right? So like that alone has helped. And even like you talk about like in the mornings, like I do try to keep my phone either in the bedroom in general or not next to my bed because I get up before my wife does. So I'm up an hour sometimes before she is even up. So I have to wear my watch for like the quiet.
Say, without an alarm, are both of you, you're going to leave your phone in the...
No, I have my alarm on my watch.
My alarm's on my watch.
Like,
I do have my notifications off until 7 a.m.
If I leave my phone in the kitchen,
yeah,
I'm sleeping through every single time because I don't wear a watch.
No. So I keep my watch. That's one of the reasons I wear it is because I get up earlier so that way I can have that like silent alarm that'll vibrate on my wrist to wake me up so she can sleep and then I can, ninja roll out of bed basically, right?
To get me one of those.
I highly recommend it. But my other thought though is I've found that the hardest place for me to rest outside of when I'm home with my kids at times is in church. Like it is an hour. Like, and I found a lot more recently that I am a consummate, like just a quick little, like, because I silenced my phone but I'm like, what did I miss? I'm like, no, who cares? Like it is 1 hour out of my day. And out of my week, I'm like, what in the world what could possibly happen in that 1 hour block that is way more important than, I'm like, my kids I know are across the hall with the kids pastor, they're fine. My wife is next to me. Like, what else could I possibly need to fuss with? And if something happens, it can wait until I'm out of church. I couldn't be in a better spot than I am right now, right? Because I am, resting. I'm learning about my faith, about God. I'm worshiping. I'm like, that is important, but I've caught myself a lot the last couple of weeks, just like a few times throughout service, I'll just do the little like flip down, be like, like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I wonder what happened. I'm like, I'll get back to that. Like too many times of like just a quick check of my watch or my phone. And I'm like, you're not missing anything. But I think it sometimes is that like, oh, well, like Sunday mornings, like maybe something's going on. Nothing's going on.
Or it's just a force of habit.
Correct.
Where you're maybe reading into that. I mean, obviously, if you're being intentional about why can't I just let that be, then that's something that you personally can work on. But also, we are such creatures of habit. And all day long, we're checking our watches, we're pulling up our phone. My phone's literally on my lap right now. Like, it's something that we are just like connected to.
It is?
Correct.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
You know,
I don't know what
we're
you're
all
talking.
right here.
What are you talking
That's
about?
something that we do.
Yeah.
It's something that is a force of nature for us. Like this is like our identity nowadays. Like it's sad, but it's also
so
like
true.
So true.
It's so true. Last night we sat down to binge watch. And I said, we can watch 2 episodes and then we're going to bed. Right. And, my daughter sat down. She's like, I want a snack. And we had literally just eaten. And I'm like, you're not even hungry. It's just a habit. When you sit in front of the TV, you want to eat.
Correct.
And I literally just had a moment just now when you said that, where I'm like, it's no different than me grabbing my phone.
Correct.
No different.
She wants to sit down and have a snack because it's become a habit while she's watching TV. I grab my phone while I'm watching TV because I can do both.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I'm like doing my week of Instagram posts or whatever. For me, I think I need to be really more intentful to get the rest, to take off the watch. I freak out when I do not have this thing on. I have 2 beautiful watches that I got as gifts. Actually, I have 3 beautiful watches. One's silver, one's gold, and one's rose gold.
Like just like regular.
Beautiful, gorgeous
regular
watches.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever wear them because I need to be connected.
It's a part of your lifeline too.
It is. It is.
It's like a full circle.
It pays my bills,
So,
right?
yeah.
So
There's
There's a lot
to
of
it.
things. There's a lot of things that we can personally look inward to and be like, this is a boundary that I'm setting, like being mindful of like, okay, if I'm cooking dinner, I'm going to take it off while we eat and while we have conversation, because even like 30 or 45 minutes of intentional time with your children and things like that too can make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't want our listeners either to think that we're categorizing being with our children as rest, because it's
exhausting.
not.
Barely rest.
But it's resting from business.
Resting from business and also doing something that fulfills us is also kind of termed as rest. I feel like when I'm working out in the evenings in my basement, in my crusty basement with my laundry, it's the only time I do my laundry is at night. It's like been a motivator for me to keep up on my laundry, because I do 1 load of laundry a day.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That's how I keep up with it, because otherwise by the end of the week, my husband's out of clothes and I'm getting blamed for it.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't. Never mind.
He does.
Yeah.
We both do. But I try very hard to like keep up with it. And I have in the past literally seen working out as a punishment for my body. Like, you're fat. I've had all those horrible like self-talk.
It doesn't feel good. It hurts.
Yes. Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Like going into, so in the early December, I started, it was actually more November, like right after Thanksgiving, I started moving my body, 20 minutes just downstairs in my basement. My kids are watching me. That was like my motivation. Last night, instead of waiting until the kids were asleep to work out, I was like, oh, Zach's not home yet. Dinner doesn't have to be made yet. I'm going to get this 30-minute workout in now because I need that. I'm craving it because it's a part of my life that I now view as rest. I'm not resting. I'm not sitting on my couch and being lazy and doing nothing.
But it's resting your mind.
Yes, it is reviving me. It is helping me feel better about the work that I'm going to do that afternoon or the next day or whatever. And it helps me be a better version of myself, which I consider rest.
Yeah. I love that.
So there's a lot of ways that you can look at it, and obviously to each their own. Every single person is going to view that differently. But I think that's a really huge tip to take with you is, making sure that your rest speaks to you.
And I think we'd love to hear about what rest looks like in your world or in your business. Yep. And, we love DMs. We love when people comment on the podcast and what we've talked about. And, what does rest look like for you? Is it a massage? Is it unplugging your phone? Is it not wearing your watch? Is it working out? What does it look like for you? What do you struggle with? And what tips do you have on helping others through it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the important thing is that on this podcast, we're as real as we can be. Sometimes that's too real probably for some people to handle. No passive aggressive tendencies from any of us here. No, but I think the reality is finding these topics that we can talk openly about so people can see us as humans and not just the entrepreneurs that we are, but then also to inspire and help guide other entrepreneurs and people that are thinking about tackling their own business. So thank thanks so much for joining us on the Real Chat podcast. Baxter, you want to tell everybody where they can find us?
Yeah, we're on Facebook and Instagram. We are technically on YouTube as well. If you want to go and subscribe, you can watch the show there as well if you're more of a visual as opposed to an audio. If not, Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome.
Love it.
Until next time, thanks everybody for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.